Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Pod Theory. I'm your host, Jason Cercone, and today I'm going to share 5 secrets for creating more captivating podcast titles. You cannot deny the fact that we live in a world dominated by grabby headlines. The more intriguing, the more controversial, the more quizzical, the more puzzling, the more attention they get, the more clicks they get. In fact, and this is to a fault in something like 99.9% of the cases, but many people get the majority of their news just from headlines that appear in their news feeds. They don't even click to read anymore. They just go by that one short statement that leads the article off. Here's a quote from David Ogilvy, a British advertising executive who passed away in 1999. 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. When you've written your headline, you've spent 80 cents out of your dollar. End quote. This is crazy in theory, but if nothing else, it shows the hypnosis headlines have over people. And I don't even know when Mr. Ogilvy made that remark, but you have to figure it's even more than 5 times now, given the number of outlets producing content every minute, combined with the number of people consuming it the next minute. There's a lot of power in a good headline. And in regards to your brand podcast, there's a lot of power in the titles you assign to each of your productions. In most cases, the title is going to be the first thing a person sees, along with show art and any social copy. But because eyes are so easily drawn to headlines, you can bet those eyes will go to your title before anything else. And if your title doesn't grab attention, a new potential listener may skip right past your show. Think about that. All the time you put into coming up with a great topic, finding the perfect subject to feature, researching the subject, and finding a guest to interview, then preparing questions for that guest, conducting the interview, all of your post-production, your promotion, creating graphics, the marketing. And someone could take 2 seconds to look at the title of your episode, make a snap judgment that the content isn't worth their time, and move on. That hurts, and it's something you can improve upon right now for your very next episode. Start thinking about headlines that draw your attention when you're on the internet. How can you apply those same principles to your podcast? Here are 5 secrets to help you get started. Number 1, think about what's in it for the listener. If you go all the way back to episode 8 of Pod Theory, I shared the cardinal rule of podcasting. It's all about the listener. So, as listeners stumble upon your latest episode, the first unconscious thought they're going to have is, what's in this for me? As humans, we're always looking for the ways we can benefit. If we're going to spend anything, money, effort, time, whatever, we want some reassurance there's going to be some return on that investment. So if your headline doesn't give your potential listener at least some glimmer of that return, they may skip right over your episode and never look back. And like I said before, you spent a significant amount of time putting that episode together and making it great, right? You want everyone to jump in and discover what it's all about. So how can you do that? Well, that leads me to secret number 2. Be direct. You don't want to mislead your listener by telling them one thing in your title, but delivering something that falls short in the content. Your listener will walk away from your show with a very bad taste in their mouth. Nor do you want to have a headline that's so long and laborious and off point, your potential listener taps out before they reach the end. Be direct. Tell them exactly what they're about to get. 15 strategies for boosting your portfolio $100,000 right now. The very best methods for treating rapid hair loss. 5 secrets for creating more captivating podcast titles. These are just a few examples, but as you read these, you know exactly what you're in for. If your listener is searching for podcasts that will help them make smarter investments and discovers your show can help them boost their portfolio quickly, the likelihood of them listening is far greater than if your title is something vague that doesn't provide that reassurance that listening to this particular podcast right here and now is a very good idea. Secret number 3, create intrigue. Much like being direct, a podcast title cloaked in mystery can draw listeners as well. The 102-year-old myth of smart investing debunked, or 27 things you never knew about mental health, are just a couple small examples of something that a listener may see and say, ooh, I've got to hear this. Or they may even say, what? No way, that can't be true. And they listen just to find out. Either way, just like a headline is designed to get people to click so their website can generate more ad revenue, in some cases, not all, a podcast title should be designed to get people listening to your show. Once they're in, you have to deliver on what you promise with that show title. If you don't debunk that myth or share some new thoughts about mental health or basically fail to deliver on the promise that your title stated, don't expect that listener to be back for your next episode or any of your subsequent episodes going forward. Number 4, keyword research. Taking some time to do keyword research can be a major shot in the arm for your podcast and can help you rank better on search engines. The more optimized your titles are for relevant keywords that people are using in your niche, the better your chances are of getting discovered when people run a search on Google. The best tool to pick up for doing effective keyword research is Ubersuggest. And you can also go back in the Pod Theory archives and check out episode 30 of the show, where I interviewed Megan Pritz, an SEO professional with over a decade of experience in the field. She provides some great strategies to help you up your keyword research game and to be sure your podcast is properly optimized for search, from your titles to your tags to your show notes. And finally, secret number 5, use numbers. There's a reason David Letterman's top 10 list was a staple of late night television for decades. People love a good list. They deliver quick, easy to consume content. They're usually not big long books that take you hours to read, and the author has an opportunity to share a lot of information in a very condensed form. Your brand podcast can serve the same purpose. Depending on your niche, you can do a number of different list-driven podcasts covering a wide variety of topics. Now, you don't want to overdo this because it can get a little stale, but there's definitely value in putting one out there from time to time. I typically do at least one per week here on Pod Theory, much like the episode you're listening to right now. Now, tip I read on the website ventureharbor.com said the bigger the number, the more likely it is to captivate someone to click. So, for example, 5 reasons to do X might be too little of a number to draw the eye, but 65 reasons to do X gives people more incentive to move forward. Now, with Pod Theory being anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes or less, I usually skew more to the low end of that number that I mentioned. But, well, you're listening, so the low number worked in this case. Use your best judgment on the number you use in your title and be sure you can deliver on it when your content starts to roll. And, rule of thumb, use the numerical value in your title versus spelling out the number, much like you see in this episode title for Pod Theory. The idea of creating a captivating show title is something that can translate over to any other content you're putting out into the world. Blog posts, YouTube videos, tweets. Building intrigue, knowing your audience so you can enhance keyword usage, being direct, and maximizing your creativity will take your titles and, by extension, your podcast to the next level. And that's going to conclude today's lesson here on Pod Theory. Before we go, it is time for another installment of Pod Deck Pandemonium. That's right, our friends at Pod Decks are all over the sponsorship of Pod Theory, and I love having these decks by my side. Pod Decks will add life to your podcast, spark worthwhile, memorable conversations with your co-hosts and your guests, and take your efforts to new heights. No podcaster should be without these decks. But don't just take my word for it. Check it out for yourself and save 10% off any order of physical Pod Decks products by visiting poddecks.com today. Use the promo code PodTheory at checkout to save. So Pod Deck Pandemonium is me putting myself on the spot by randomly selecting one card from one of my 5 Pod Deck decks and talking about it right here on the show. I shuffled my interview deck before recording today's episode, and I'm going to pull my card right now. What are you most excited about right now? Well, other than being on the mic and getting to talk to you like I do every day, Less than a week ago, I booked a ticket to go to Florida for 10 days at the end of March. And the reason why I'm so excited is not, I mean, I'm in Pittsburgh, so it's been snowing, it's been cold. So obviously, I'm excited to get into a warmer climate and get my golf clubs out. I got a new 3-wood for Christmas. I cannot wait to hit that guy. So I'm very excited to go to Florida, but even more so is because my parents go down there in the winter since my dad retired. This is their second year down there that they go down there for a few months, and I was set to go last year, and my plane was set to leave, I think, 1 to 2 weeks after the pandemic broke out. So obviously that trip was lost. But last year on my calendar, at one point I was supposed to be going to Nashville with my friends. That got 86'd. I was supposed to be going to North Carolina. That got shot down. I was supposed to be going to San Antonio at some point. That got blown to hell. And like I mentioned, I was supposed to be going to Florida for a week last year, and that didn't happen. So I've barely made it outside the Pennsylvania borders as we've gone through COVID-19. So I'm very excited to get down and see my parents, to get out the golf clubs, and to have some fun in a tropical climate. So what am I most excited about right now? That is it. Going on a nice trip and taking some time to recharge. So that concludes today's installment of Pod Deck Pandemonium. Like I said, jump over to poddex.com. That's PODDECKS.com. Grab your pod decks, stimulate some conversation on your show, save 10% by using the promo code PodTheory, and take your podcast to the next level. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Pod Theory. Good talk. I'll see you back here tomorrow. This has been Jason Cercone on Pod Theory.